Have you ever stopped to think about the hidden price tag on every single AI query you make? Every time you ask a question or generate an image? It's not just about your subscription fee. There's a deeper structural cost that's built into the very foundation of modern AI. So today, we're not just talking about algorithms. We're going to explore how one single overlooked assumption about geometry is costing us billions of dollars and megawatts of power, and how changing it could literally reshape the entire field.
Okay, so let's dive into this invisible tax. What is it really? Well, imagine a company wants to make all its internal documents searchable using AI. To do that, they use something called a vector database. A pretty standard setup for this can easily run them $3,000 a month. That right there, that's the staggering and often totally unseen price of our current AI infrastructure. And that's just for one company. This cost scales up like crazy across the entire industry.
And when we zoom out to the global scale, the numbers are just mind-boggling. Projections from the International Energy Agency show that by 2030, data centers could be eating up nearly 1,000 terawatt-hours of electricity. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire country of Japan consumes today. And you know what's driving a huge chunk of that growth? You guessed it, AI.
To make that even more concrete, get this. Researchers estimated that just the initial training for the GPT-3 model pumped out over 550 tons of carbon dioxide. That's like flying from New York to San Francisco and back again, 120 times. But here's the kicker. That's just the one-time training cost. The real story, the expensive part, is what happens next.
So where does all that energy actually go? You might think it's that huge one-time bill for training the AI. But nope, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The ongoing day-to-day use of AI, what the pros call inference, that accounts for up to 90% of the total energy bill. Every single search, every summary, every picture you generate, it all adds up. So, the billion-dollar question is why? Why does it take so much energy and so much money to run these incredible models? The answer is, well, it's pretty surprising. It has less to do with how complex the AI's thoughts are, and way more to do with a fundamental, hidden assumption that's been baked into almost every system we use. It all comes down to a choice about geometry.
You see, modern AI represents every single concept, every word, sentence, and idea as a point in a high-dimensional but fundamentally flat space. Mathematicians call this Euclidean space. Yeah, it's the same geometry we all learned back in high school, with the parallel lines and straight line distances. It feels really intuitive, but it turns out it has a massive, hidden flaw when it comes to AI.
And this right here illustrates the problem perfectly. Think about it. Human knowledge is hierarchical, right? It's like a branching tree. You have animal, which branches into mammal, which branches into dog, which branches into beagle. Trying to force that complex branching structure onto a flat surface creates massive distortion. It's just like how Greenland looks as big as Africa on a standard world map. It's completely warped. And to compensate, the whole industry has this problem of over-engineering. Teams just default to these huge 1536-dimensional vectors because, hey, it's the standard, not because the meaning actually needs all that space.
This is the core geometric mismatch. The volume of a flat space grows slowly, polynomially. But the complexity of a knowledge tree grows exponentially. So trying to cram that tree into the flat space is like trying to fit a giant oak tree into a shoebox. You just have to keep making the box bigger and bigger, adding more dimensions. But what if we used a different geometry? What if we used a space whose volume grows exponentially, perfectly matching the shape of the knowledge it's trying to represent? Well, that space exists. It's called hyperbolic space. Okay, so how do we actually make this switch? A research program called Contrastive Geometric Transfer, or CGT for short, proposes a way to do exactly that. It's essentially a method for translating information from that flat, inefficient Euclidean space into the curved, super-efficient hyperbolic space. And the projected result is a staggering 24-fold compression.
So what does that mean in practice? Well, it means we can potentially take a standard 768-dimensional vector, the kind used in so many of today's models, and compress it all the way down to just 32 dimensions. That is 24 times less data to move around and process for every single operation. And here's the really cool part. According to academic benchmarks, this is achieved while retaining over 97% of the original meaning. Now, of course, real-world validation is the next big step, but that's an incredible starting point. And what's absolutely crucial here is that this isn't just blind compression.
We're not just squishing the data and hoping for the best. The research actually provides a scientific basis for right-sizing AI. It introduces these rigorous geometric checks, let's call them F1, F2, and F3, that act like a quality control system. They verify things like, hey, are the concepts still organized correctly? And are similar ideas still close to each other? This lets you actually prove that the new, much smaller representation is a faithful, high-quality map of the original.
This ability to scientifically right-size our models could trigger a really fundamental shift in the entire AI industry. For years, the old paradigm was just bigger is better. Just throw more data, more money, more computing power at the problem until it works. This research points to a whole new era of geometric efficiency, where the motto is going to be leaner is smarter.
So what are the implications of all this? They're massive. Remember that vector database that cost up to $3,000 a month? Well, with just 32 dimensions instead of hundreds, the projected cost plummets to around $100. That's a 90% reduction. Search speed could be 24 times faster, making real-time AI on a regular computer a genuine possibility. This really starts to challenge the concentration of power in AI. Companies like Google, Apple, and Meta are pouring billions, literally billions, into infrastructure because these bloated, oversized models demand it. This approach could democratize access, empowering smaller teams and researchers everywhere to build powerful AI without needing a planet-sized data center.
And all this research forces us to ask a really profound question that gets right to the heart of the AI field. We've been so focused on building ever larger engines, right? More and more horsepower. But what if the real problem is that we've been trying to drive a square car this whole time? What if the bottleneck was never about a lack of computing power, but just using the wrong geometry?
And that really is the biggest takeaway here. This isn't just about some clever mathematical trick. It's about the power of questioning our most basic invisible assumptions. By daring to challenge the very shape of our data, we open the door to a more efficient, more sustainable, and frankly, a radically more accessible technological future for all of us.